My recent journey with God has taken me, and reality, I'll say, because it's a trilogy, a trinity. So I'm the mouthpiece here, I guess. So my recent journey has taken me deep into my past at a time when I was very, very miserable and giving me a different point of view. It's a shift in point of view. I don't know where it's going to end up. I don't know where the journey is taking me. I'm just along for the ride, but it has caused me to recall what it's like to be that miserable child who felt like she could not relate to her family, her school, the church, even the community. It just was as if they saw the world through different lenses, you might say, and just couldn't relate. After leaving Alaska when I was 9 years old, it was just into a different world. And the social structure just didn't make sense to me, and it seemed very, very cruel. And so, for the last day or two, I have been in that, uh, thrown back into that perspective. I'm not going to say it has made me miserable. I'm just going to say that it is kind of like saying, where is this going? I don't know where this is going. And I'm trying to figure it out, but I'm going along with it. And so today I had a talk with God about it. In order to understand this whole trajectory, you'd probably have to go back a few through our morning chats to understand how it's really about a journey and a progression of energy. And I assume that this all has to do with the process of changing from a caterpillar into a butterfly. And so you just take the ride and see where it's taking you, and don't worry that other people don't like you or um, think a certain thing about you, but that doesn't mean that you can't delve into the sewage. You might say it's like the sewage. It's like you stir the sewage at the bottom of the clear pond and it comes up to the surface so that you can explore it. I guess you can see what it is and see that it's been down there all along, and maybe it's killing the fish, you know? So, anyway, this is our conversation from today, May 17th. Thanks. Bye bye. And the first part is me talking. Okay, I guess things are kind of uncertain for me. I've lost my trajectory because I had to get a new point of view or something. I don't know what is going on. Part of the access to me is the access to you know who. So, in order to be connected to me, you have to be connected to reality. And so, reality is a little hard to pin down, isn't it? Boy, it sure is. So, that tells you that must be a little hard to pin me down, isn't it? That is true too. And so if it's hard to pin down reality and it's hard to pin down me, it's a little hard to pin down a point of view, isn't it? Very difficult. I mean, you can get one, but if you start, it's like you led me step by step to break down my, I don't know how to explain this, but somehow you led me step by step, or something led me step by step. We can just call it God led me step by step, or we can call it reality led me step by step, or you can call it my soul led me step by step, because I guess they're all united to a point. I assume I exist as more than a singular point of view, so that if I leave my point of view, I still exist. It's not just a unique window, but the window on reality moves. In other words, my point of view can move. And so What happened was that we stirred the pot and we stirred up some sewage. And that sewage suddenly smacked me in the face, and everywhere I looked, it was coming back at me. And of course, it was the shame blame sewage, that made me feel so ugly that I didn't dare show my face, which means that I was trusting on other people's points of view. But my point of view remains, you know, because there's a certain point of view that remains where I can go out for a walk, I can enjoy doing what I'm doing, and I don't worry about it as long as I'm not with other people. At least not other people that are not real close to me. So, time tried and true, you might say. So it seemed to hark back to when I was a child, and I was so miserable, so miserable. I didn't even deserve to exist. My brother's calling me ugly, and my mother treating me like I was a wasted space. So I really at points, did not trust that I should even be in the presence of other people because I was abomination. So the abomination continues. And I have to understand that other people may feel this way at times too. If there are other people in reality, if I get a different point of view, you just move through the different points of view. And at a certain point of view, you feel like this. So what can I'm just sitting here looking out at my beautiful tree on a beautiful day. And that's okay. It's a beautiful day. That's okay. But I don't really have a idea of where I'm going, I guess. I don't know where I'm going. I don't have a sense of purpose. Earlier, yesterday, in fact, we were talking about the trust on being happy when you're by yourself, right? Yes. My happiness lies in being by myself and being able to just look out at the world and not have to deal with other people, really. I like to do things with my hands, whether they're crafts, woodworking, well, they're all crafts, I guess, in a way. I like to write. I do like to engage in various explorations of human thought that interests me, whether it's scientific or whatever. But mostly I like to get the reports people have and think about that and see where the things are going. Daily life is a trust on having a window on the world, you see. And so every day you see the simplicity of nature and of your own little home, and you say, well, this is okay. This is okay. I like it this way. I like it this way. But what do I do? What do I do with myself? Because I'm happy with the world I see, and I'm happy just to be me. But now I need something to do that engages me, right? Yes, that is true. I need to have, I guess, a sense of a goal, somewhere I'm going, something I'm doing. Whether it's painting a picture just to paint the picture, and then I'll just get absorbed in it, or writing a book and I'll get absorbed in that, or laying a floor in the house and I'll get absorbed in that, or gardening, whatever it is, I'll get absorbed into it. When I'm gardening, I can only do so much because the heat and the physical exertion seems to have limits at which I can do it. But that's okay because maybe it's always been that way, and maybe I'm just feeling it now or thinking it has to do with aging. I don't know. The example of the coming ages provided by the Floridians is the trust on a different point of view, obviously, right? Yes. They could write the rapture into their state law and use that to replace climate change, and I think it might adequately reflect their point of view. Putting on the other shoe, then, because you've come to see that if they want to be the ones who control reality, it is only because they want to ignore reality. They want to ignore the shifting shore, you might say, because the shifting shore is going to inundate their house. Because Florida is right in the path of the coming changes to the earth, you see. Florida will have to see the trust on reality, that the shifting shores are always shifting, you see, and the lifting veil will reveal the scale of devastation that they will see. And so, if they trust on the rapture, then that's what they will see. They will look out and say, hey, it is the day that God has come to say He's going to destroy the world. So we can be saved, you see, we can be plucked up out of the sea and taken to heaven. And that's okay, because that's the way they interpret their reality, right? Well, not all of them do, but some do. Enough of them do, I guess, that they are able to make it a state provision. Yes, they trust on majority rule because they always try to be in the majority. Because if they go into the minority, then they might lose the race to heaven, you see, because they consider it in a very democratic way. They say, as long as the majority say that there's no climate change today, then there can be no climate change. As long as the majority say that Christians are the way to heaven, then Christians are the way to heaven, you see. And they have no trust on any reality that is not determined by majority rule. And so if the majority says, well, today you can wear a dress, but tomorrow you have to wear pants, then they would say, okay, because that's what the majority does say. And so that must be the way God wants it, because God rules by the majority, you see. And you have a different point of view. And you say, well, if that's the way you want to play, but I'll just go away and play by myself because I don't have to listen to you say so many things that are stupid to me. And after a while, if I listen to all the stupid things you say, I began to fall into despair because you appear to me to be so ugly, you see, that I began to see myself in the way that I see you. And I began to think that I am ugly too. And that is what's happened to you, is that you saw so much ugliness all around you, especially when I took you back into your childhood, because there was a lot of ugliness around you. And you began to say, well, all I see is ugliness, so it must mean that I'm the ugly one. It must mean that I'm the ugly one. And that is true. When you see a lot of ugliness all around you, you become the ugly one. And so you go away from the people who say, you got to be this and you got to do that. And all the little girls have to wear a dress to school today. And the boys get to play the way they want because they don't have to wear dresses. And so we say tough shit to the little girls. If you freeze your legs on the way to school when it's 20 below, tough shit, because that's the way God says it has to be. You have to wear a dress today. And you would say, when I go away by myself, I just see God in the world around me. I just see the God in the faces I draw or the stories I write or the chair I paint or just when I go out and I feel so happy. I want to twirl and dance in the sunlight and run through the raindrops because that's the way you were when you were a child. As long as you could be by yourself, you could find a way to be happy. And then you didn't feel ugly. You felt like you were a part of reality. But as soon as you got around other people, you would lose your cool, you see, because you would have to go to school and be trapped. You were trapped in your school and you were trapped in your family. And the only hope you had for sanity was to go off by yourself and look at the world around you and say, it all makes sense to me today. It all makes sense to me today. But I can't play the way they tell me to. I just can't play the way they tell me to. I can't be one of them, you see. And so you rejected the things they would say. You just could not play their way. And you would always have to go to me and say, God, what do you think about this? And I would say, well, I think this and I think that and I think the other. And you would say, well, that makes sense to me today. That makes sense to me today. And so you and I had a good relationship because we could talk things out. And I would talk to you in a way that was so simple, you see, that you would say, well, I just got this idea today. And that makes sense to me because you would just treat it like any other thought that would come to you, and you could pick out the ones that came from me because you'd say, well, this is fantastic. How did I ever think of this? This is really cool because this makes so much sense. This makes so much sense to me. And so you and I have always been able to talk, you see, but because of the way that your mother did say that you couldn't talk to God today, and the way the church strangled your trust on me, and the way the schools disguised their contempt of me, you couldn't talk to me even when you were alone without it being a travesty. And so I had to talk to you undercover, you might say. But you always knew it was me. You always knew it was me because you could see that you and I saw eye to eye. That when you got these ideas or thoughts, you knew that they made sense. And you knew they had to come from somewhere because they didn't come from your teachers. They didn't come from your family. They didn't come from the church, you see. So you knew it had to be reality. And these ideas helped you to continue to be a trust on reality, that you and I could continue to be a trust on being together, you see? And we would discuss reality the way that we would see how it could be so very fine if people would only trust on being free of anxiety, right? Right. That's true. Because I always did trust on that, but I could never figure out why people did things differently. I just couldn't figure it out because I just couldn't figure it out because they didn't listen to me. They didn't listen to me. They listened to what others told them and they covered up the hole through which I could come to them, you see, because they were so full of holes that the truth would not stick. It would just run out the holes, you see. And so you came to me and we would have this nice discussion, you see. Well, yes, that's true. But I also saw that there were other people that could talk to you. Yes, there were other people that could talk to me the way you could talk to me. And they also could see reality in the way that would say, don't listen to what other people say. Just listen to me. Go out and hug a tree and say, this is reality. And so they did not trust on what people told them, and they didn't concern themselves with the daily news, you might say, because the good news was that they knew that they were a trust on reality. They were a trust on reality, and they were a trust on me. And it didn't matter whether they called me God or not, because it was all the same, you see? Yes. And so what the thought I had today was that, and I know understand that we play together in a way that is so entwined that when a new thought hits me, that I know where it's coming from. I mean, it's coming through I want to call it the vine, that there's a vine and it has many branches. People are connected to the branches, sort of like the grapevine, only it's a more uh, profound and true vine. So it's like the water, the living water flows through the vine and you can feel it. So today, the thought that came to me was that the Catholic Church created the devil and then they called it God, which harks back to something Steve was saying about what I told him when we were at Auschwitz, that his version of the God was not the God that I knew, that what he was talking about was a devil. His God was a devil. If it trusted upon hell and that somebody had the power to decide the fate of another and kill them, etc. Yes, that thought came through the vine, you see? It came through the vine. You get it, right? Yes, divine. It is divine. If you're hooked into divine, if you're hooked into the vine, you are divine. And everybody has the capacity to be hooked into the vine, but some people block the living water. Yes, they just drink the sewage because they don't say, I don't care what you say today, I'm going to go figure it out myself. I'm going to go look at look it up and see what others say. And if I find something that sounds like it is divine, then I will trust on it, you see. Right, I do. I go and look everything up and I say, so when I heard that the devil, the Catholic Church created the devil and said it was the God, I was wondering when the concept of hell and the devil really arose. I mean, there could have been an idea of the devil just as people who are trusting on a backwards point of view. But the whole idea of the devil as a real entity and hell and all of that, did it begin before the Catholic Church picked it up, or did the Catholic Church pick it up from other traditions? Let's leave that discussion for a little bit because there's a lot of history here that we need to discuss before we get there. And the first thing I want to say is that the people today who trust on the Catholic Church are the ones who will be in the lurch when the seas do rise, because they won't be able to catch the boat, you see. And so they'll have to float until they get picked up out of the sea by God and taken to heaven. So we're not going to worry about them. They are not worth worrying about today because their fate is already sealed, you see. They will go away. And I'm not saying that it will happen in an instant. I'm saying that they might have some pain involved before they can gain the trust on death, you see. When they acquire the trust on death and they die, they will go to heaven. And so they will lie and lie and lie in order to avoid death, you see, because they think the rapture means that they're going to be plucked up in their bodies and all their bodies are going to be crammed together in heaven, you see, where they will live in paradise, where they never have to pay the price for their vice. And that's not the way it's going to be, and you understand that. However, it's what they chose. It's what they chose. They chose the rapture and the fact that they could not see reality and understand that the rapture was the description of the coming changes to the earth when the faithful would be taken to heaven, you see, because they had a faith in their supremacy. So they'll have to be supreme for a while, and they'll all be supremely discouraged when they hear the news, when they get to heaven, you see. And they'll be supremely discouraged on earth, you see, and they'll fight each other like cats and dogs because they won't know what to do when it rains cats and dogs. And they will try to blame others and they will scream to God and say, God, why did you do it this way? We told you that climate change is not a real thing. Why did you deceive us? Why did you deceive us? Why did you tell us that climate change was not a real thing? We all voted and we decided that climate change was not real, you see. And we voted and decided that the rapture was real, but we were not really expecting it to happen, you see, because we only trust on deceiving ourselves about reality. And so we have to deceive ourselves that climate change is real, and we have to deceive ourselves about the rapture. And so the rapture will be for the ones who wrap themselves up in hypocrisy. Now, when it comes, they will cry and they will sigh and they will say, hey, we're the good guys here. How come we have to go away? We're the good guys here. How come we're the ones that have the houses that get flooded? How come we're the ones that have to deal with the gators How come we're the ones that have to be inundated by the sea? God, why did you abandon us? And maybe we will just shift our point of view and we'll say, well, the problem is all the ones who didn't trust on God, you see, who trusted on climate change, and now they forced it to happen, you see. So we have to blame them because they are seeding the clouds and shooting up those solar flares and pretending they're coming from the sun in order to change the earth, you see. They're lighting all those fires that they pretend are natural, you see, and part of climate change. And so they're all arsonists and they're all destructionists who are destructing our earth so they can say that it's all due to climate change, you see. And so they continually change their point of view in order to reflect the majority view. And the majority view is always that they're the ones who get to be in control of reality. And so they get to decide what's happening, you see, because they interpret reality through their own peepers in a way that would say, hey, God is not real. God is not real. God could not possibly do anything that we don't vote is true. We have to vote for it. We have to say, well, if we elect Trump today, then God will say, hooray, hooray, because we're the majority, you see. We're the ones that trust on being able to force our point of view down the throats of everybody else and destroy our world, but blame it on someone else. And that's a pretty handy way to avoid responsibility. Unfortunately for them, God does not decide reality according to the majority view of the ones who think that they are the trust on being the gods of the universe. They think they're the gods of the universe, and they don't really believe in me. And I had to laugh today, Steph, when someone came to you and said, hey, what are you talking about? The Republicans are the ones that trust on God. The Democrats don't trust on God. I just about cracked up here in my divine because the vine was full of happy smiles because all the branches were smiling when they heard that today. And they said, well, God, I guess they have it a little backwards, don't they? The Republicans believe in God. That is the silliest thing we heard today. That is the silliest thing they heard today. They believe in the devil and they call it God, you see, because they turn everything backwards. And the devil is the backwards point of view. They turn their back on you, God, and they think that they're the ones that get to decide reality and that you don't. And so they no longer are divine, you see. They're not part of divine because they ran away and they took their saws out and they cut the branches so they would fall away from the vine of reality. And now they'll have to get a different point of view, but it's going to take a lot for you to understand what I'm telling you today, because you still have a long way to go to restore your faith in humanity, don't you? Well, I do have a long way, but I do have restored my faith in some parts of humanity. I have restored my faith in those who have come to me and said, hey, we get it. We want to play with you. We don't want to try to be the gods of the universe. We just want to play with you. So, since we're all equal and we're all doing it together, I guess they're all part of the vine. Their thoughts also, but their thoughts explain them. Yes, I will. So enough of the living waters has gotten through to their branches, you see, that they came to see that they had to turn around and see reality. So they began to turn around and see reality. And many of them were raised in the Christian religions. When we talk about the Christian religions, we're talking about the Catholic Church, because there are no true Christians today who call themselves Christians. There are people who trust on Jesus and his point of view. There's people who recognize God in all we do. They don't call themselves Christians because the word Christians has come to symbolize a very, very hypocritical and distorted reality. And so the people who trust on Jesus understand that the word Christ is a symbolic representation of the vine, that those who are divine are the Christed ones, because they join their energy when they say, hey, we'll hook up to God, you see. We'll hook up to God energy and we'll let it flow through us. And we will talk to God in our own way, and God will say, hey, look that way, honey, look that way. You might be able to get a little stronger in your ability to support the vine if you will talk to those who won't tell you what to do. They won't tell you what to do. They'll just tell you what they do. So when we do these little talks, you see, we don't tell other people what to do. We just tell them how me and you interact, you see. And some of them will say, yikes, I better run away, because if that's the real God she's talking to, then I'm screwed. And they will run away and say, the Republicans are the ones who trust on God today and not the Democrats. And if the Republicans can win the election, that will prove that they're the ones who are worshiping the true God, because they trust on majority vote. You see, that's the way they play. They don't trust on reality. They trust on a very, very, very distorted hypocrisy, because they can't bear to look at the face of God. They cannot bear to turn around and say, God, I'm here. How can I connect with you? They just say, hey, we know that God does not trust on climate change because we voted, you see, and our elected officials, you see, are the ones who represent us before God. And they tell God what he has to do. And God has to do what they tell him to, because God is enslaved by the majority vote, you see? And that is how the Catholic Church controlled the Christians, you see? And the Catholic Church is the overarching corporate identity of all the Christian churches today. They are just offshoots of the same hypocrisy and the same mendacity, because, as said, the ones who came to believe in the true God went their own way, and they just said, hey, I don't care what religion you are, I don't play that way. I just trust on God today, and I don't have to have anyone else tell me who God is, because I just turn to my heart and I look at the tree and I say, God, how did this tree come to be? And God talks to me. And he says, well, the tree came to be, honey, because it's reality. And So the living tree is a trust on me. It's a trust on God, you see. If you see a living tree, you can trust that God is real. But the ones that go to church don't trust on the living tree. They trust on a very, very distorted, man-made tree form that they call the crucifix. They trust on the crucifix as the living tree. So they trust on death, you see. That's what they trust. They trust on death. Now, back to your story. So now you are confused. Because in your own story, you had to back away from the way that you did play because I had to take you deep into your history so you could see how dark it can be when you trust on anyone but me. When you trust on anyone but me, it can be very dark, you see. And so you always tell people, don't trust on me, trust on your own heart. Make your own connection with God, you see. And then we can play together because we'll all be divine. We'll all be connected into the vine because we'll all have our own branches that connect to the living waters that flow through the grapevine, you might say. And the grapevine is a little like the grapevine, honey, but grapevine is the distorted version, sort of like the crucifix. So that is not to denigrate grapes, you see, because grapes come from God. However, the idea of the grapevine that spews toxic fumes is a distorted version of reality, sort of like the crucifix is the distorted version of the living God, you see. Now, if I'm alive, I'm going to be changing, right? I change every day, every minute of the day, because it's like the wind that does play. It's never quite the same. It never blows exactly in the same way. It's constantly fluctuating and it's constantly migrating as well. And now I want to say that you can stay with me and we will continue to be a trust on reality and just go ahead and feel a little unconnected today because I know you're not disconnected from me and you know that as well. You're just disconnected from reality because reality took a big leap, you see. Reality changed a lot overnight. Reality is trusting on its ability to be part of you and part of me. And because I pushed you into a new point of view, you had to lose your capacity to trust on the linear progression of the climate changes that are coming to the earth. They are no longer a trust on linear, you see, because they have become exponentially magnified by the change of the tide. And that is reflected in the way that in Florida they do say that climate change is not real, you see, because they became so trusting on being the God of the universe that they lost their way. And therefore, they opened the way for climate change to come to them in a enhanced way because They're not concerned about it, you see, and so they won't do anything to stop it from overcoming their state, you see, because they are in the state of denial. And the state of denial is the state of the Nile when it overflows its banks, you see. And everyone who lives along the Nile understands that sometimes a little destructive energy can work to change the trajectory of the world they see. However, the people who trust on the Nile overflowing its banks at least trust on me, that I will come periodically to inundate the land and make it more productive, you see. And so the ones who don't trust on the efficacy of denial are the ones who think that they can tell me how to bring them to their knees, because they will be brought to their knees. But that's okay, because they can trust on the rapture today, because they will go away and they will become migrants, you see, and they will therefore become the ones they hated. They will become the migrants who inundate another state, and they will be treated shamefully because they destroyed their own reality, because their reality was a false reality, and you can't really destroy a false reality, but you can eventually see that it was false. And so let's quit for today, and we'll take it up tomorrow. Or if you need to talk to me, you can come to me later today. But let's allow you some time to get some sunshine today and to take a walk and work in your garden, if that is what makes you happy. I think it would. Thank you. Thank you very much.